All right. Hello, everyone. Today I'll talk about playable ads, the importance of them, how to build playables in the Unity engine using Playworks, and then I'll also talk about how to test and iterate playables for testing. My name is Robin Kuijer, and I currently lead Unity Playworks. I'm based in the Netherlands, and I have 30 years of experience as a gamer and close to a decade of experience on both UA and monetization in the mobile gaming space. My journey began almost 10 years ago when I did an internship at a company called Chartboost. And from there, I went into the role of account management on the UA side and then later on the monetization side. And for the past 4 years, I've been leading Unity Playworks, where I've helped many studios build playables and test playables. So the agenda for today is as follows. First, we'll look at the importance of playable ads in the current UA landscape. Then I would love to show you how you can build playables in the Unity engine using Unity Playworks. Thirdly, I'll talk about the importance of creating playable iterations and how to properly do so. And finally, we'll look at a real example of playable iterations and testing from one of our valued partners, Ketchup, and their title, Rider Worlds. All right, so playables have been around since 2012. And on the graph here, we can see the impression share of playables from playables being built using Unity Playworks. Playables became especially popular during the rise of hyper-casual, where you had simple games becoming more popular. And then playables were a very easy way to showcase that gameplay and to get users to play your game. During that time of hyper-casual, there was more demand for playables, and because of that, also more supply. So again, here we saw more playable agencies, more playable platforms, and that's been the beginning of the rise of playables. And today, you cannot get around playable anymore, and any big studio or any small studio that's doing UA is using playables today. So what makes playables such an effective and essential ad format? Well, firstly, playable is the most engaging ad format because it's a true demonstration of what users can expect from your game. If we compare that with video, for example, with video, you're just looking at the screen. There's no interaction needed. Yes, there can be emotion, but if we then compare that against playable, playable is a way more interactive experience. It's a real try before you buy, and it's similar to how you can play demos of games and try them out. So due to this engaging nature of playable ads, they offer very high conversion rates, and we frequently see IPMs above 40. And the impact of this is way more than just better ads. Because if you have higher IPMs, you have a lower cost per install, which means that you get higher returns on ad spend. So overall, your game is becoming more profitable just by using playables. We see playables work well across all genres, and that's because playables are suitable for both storytelling, but also for action. Yes, you have playables that work well, where you showcase gameplay, but it can also be storytelling. There can be a story as part of the gameplay or a character development there. And the genres that we've worked with include puzzle, RPG, hyper-casual, hybrid casual. And over the last few years, we also see an increase of playables coming from non-gaming studios. And you can think of the example of a shoe online store where they're selling shoes. And then the playable can be, for example, a runner where you need to collect points. And then at the end, you can redeem those points to get a discount in the shoe store. So also for non-gaming, we see playables becoming an increasingly source for installs. And then I would like to have a note on that playables are not always, you might have seen those as well, they're not always a one-on-one copy of the gameplay, but still they perform well. And I can understand that it kind of goes against what I was just saying, where the playable can be a showcase of the gameplay. But the non-authentic ads perform well if you don't mislead the user. Instead, you can highlight or exaggerate a certain emotion or a certain part of the gameplay. Again, you can think about here it's a match-3 game, but there is something more at stake. But the core is still a match-3 game. So that's where we see non-authentic playables work well. Unfortunately, playables do come with some challenges of its own, which the first one is that ad networks require playables to be in HTML format. And if you're building your mobile game in, hopefully, Unity, Unity doesn't allow you to export to plain HTML, especially within 5 MB, because playables need to be below 5 MB as per network requirements. And that's just something that most of the engines cannot do. Secondly, if you want to create playable iterations for playable testing, this is a very resource-heavy and therefore also costly process. And then finally, each ad network has their own technical requirements. So they have different technical requirements of how the code should be of the playable. Again, making playables for multiple ad networks is something which can be time-consuming, resource-heavy, and costly. So let's have a look at how you can build playables directly in-house from the Unity engine. And we'll start with a short video.
You've built a game with amazing gameplay. Now use it to create high-impact playable ads that can grow your user base. With Unity Playworks, you can turn your gameplay into a high-performing ad right from the Unity engine. And with the Playworks dashboard, you can iterate and publish across all major networks in just a few clicks to attract users who love your game. Try it out now. Head to unity.com to get started.
All right, so what is Unity Playworks? So Unity Playworks is a plugin for the Unity engine that allows you to then build your playables directly from the engine. And why does this matter? Because building from the Unity engine should help speed up playable production, because you can use whatever you have from your mobile game and use that directly for your playable production. So you can use the assets, you can use the scripts that you have, you can even use a whole scene of your mobile game and then convert that into a playable. Did you know that 9 out of 10 mobile games are actually built using Unity Playworks? And then during the development, you can do what we call expose a variable, which brings us to step 2. Exposing a variable is essentially any variable that you would have in a script. You can add a piece of code to that, and then the variable will appear on the dashboard as a setting. So we'll go into the dashboard in a little bit, but what you can then do is you can create different iterations without any additional coding. So you can change variables from, let's say, a slider, or you can set your own variable, again, in the dashboard, which we will see. And then finally, on the third step, you can go live on all major channels. So you can export the playables, and it will take care of the technical requirements of each ad network. So you can just simply export it. Building a playable in the Unity engine is as straightforward as it sounds. Everything just works the same as you would be developing a mobile game in the Unity engine, except the scope now is different, because the scope now is building a playable. The plugin in the Unity engine is then linked to your account and therefore linked to the Playworks dashboard. And you can, like I said, you can use a game scene itself and then strip it down to be a playable. Once you've built your playable, you can simply go to the settings and then export it to the Playworks dashboard. And then one more thing on exposing a variable. So this is the implementation of exposing a variable, and it's very simple. Here we have, on the top, we have a part of a script where you would normally set the amount of lives, which is set to 1. But instead of deciding that the amount of lives should be 1, what we're doing is we're adding some predefined line of code. And now, instead of saying amount of lives is 1, what we're saying is amount of lives can be a range between 0 to 10. And then later on in the dashboard, we're able to change the amount of lives anywhere within that range. We'll get to why that's important in a little bit. So let's dive into creating iterations, because that's the essence of why we need game variables. So the dashboard is where the magic happens, and I will go into a live demo. We can start creating playable iterations from the dashboard. And at this stage, we won't be needing any additional coding anymore. So let's have a closer look at the dashboard. All right, so this is Unity Playworks. So this is the dashboard. And just mind you that this comes after step 1. So now we have developed the playable in the Unity engine and then exported it to the dashboard. This is a demo account. So we have a fake app here, which is called Basketball Run 3D. And then I can go ahead and open it. And then in here, I will find the playable.
Can I have a question? It's in the web or
This is in web. Yes, correct. So just open this playable. And the first thing we can do is we can go ahead and play it. So we can see the whole playable, play it all the way to the end. For now, I will just refresh it, and then we can start again if we want. The first thing I noticed, by the way, it's showing footballs, which is a bit strange. Let me change that to basketball. There you go. Now it makes a lot more sense. On the left, what we see are the setting categories. So we have game settings, scene settings, and player settings. And these are the settings that we've implemented in the Unity engine. So we can go ahead and we can change something. So I just changed the ball type from football to basketball. But what we can also do is we can change the player clothing color and change it from red to blue. And then the playable will automatically refresh. Okay, there it is. I think the Wi-Fi is acting up a little bit. The playable will refresh, and now we have a different clothing color. If we then want to test, let's say, a red clothing color versus a blue clothing color, we can save the creative. So we would be able to go in here. We can say we rename it. We call it something like blue version. And then we can save it. And then we can download it for all major channels in here. Changing a color of a shirt might not be so significant. So let's dive into a bit more advanced settings or more interesting settings. If we go back to the player settings, we can change the player speed, let's say, to 5. And if we go to the game settings, we can set the enemy amount to small, which it already is on. Now, if we start playing, it's a very slow, therefore longer experience. And it's also quite easy because the enemy amount is very little and we can easily avoid the enemies. And then at the end, we need to score 3 points. Again, so very long experience, very easy. Let's say we change the player speed to 15 and then change the game settings, the enemy amount to high. And now suddenly we have a completely different experience. It's very fast and we fill the level. So again, yes, you can change a color, you can change a button, but here we provoke a different emotion because now instead of having a long playable, which is very easy, we now have a playable which is a short one and it's a lot more difficult. And this is essentially the essence of testing iterations. You want to build playable iterations that matter. And you can do so by changing the settings and having settings, again, that are important. So you can think about having a number of stages in a playable, and then you create a version where you have 1 stage or you have 3 stages. You can think about a game where there's a lot of objects in there, and you can have a slider of the amount of objects in there, so you can have like extremely many objects or just a small amount of objects. And these are really the differences, and you can then go ahead and test them and see for yourself how the performance will differ. All right. A very cool part about Unity Playworks as well is that as you are building playable iterations, you can have a QR code show up that you can scan, or you can have the link, so you can just go there and start playing the playable. This is fun to do, but this also helps you when you're working with a team and you can show playable iterations to each other without the need of downloading the file, sending it to someone, that person uploading it to a test server. So yeah, go ahead and please feel free to scan the QR code and play the playable. I'll pause here for a short 15 seconds. If you fail or if you win, you can refresh. It will open in the browser, so it will refresh, and you can just play it again. There will be a bunch more, by the way. All right. Then comes the questions, why do iterations matter? And it goes back to building playable iterations or building playables in general. It takes up resources. And you might be one iteration away from finding your hero creative. Building playable iterations can also be done for different use cases. So if we think about the example of the basketball, the short version and the long version, we can use the short version for, let's say, an interactive end card at the end of a video. And then we can use the longer version for a playable standalone. Also, different iterations might work better on different ad networks, as each ad network has their own audience and their own publishers. So they have kind of their own creative best practices. So again, being able to quickly build iterations should help you optimize amongst all your networks. And then again, it's important to build distinguishable iterations that have a great significance and can provoke a different emotion to the user. So testing is essential. So if you would ask me what works well, I would always tell you it depends and you need to test it. But there is a few trends that we see today, which I would say these are some best practices. And the first one is about the hook. And the hook is the first 1 to 3 seconds of a playable. And the goal of the hook is to grab the attention of the user. During the hook, it needs to be clear to the user what needs to be done. And there needs to be some type of emotion as well attached to it. Other examples of good hooks are someone or something is on fire and you need to rescue them now. Or you have 20 seconds to solve this puzzle and 90% of users before you failed. It can also be something like choose your weapon, and then it can be a rocket launcher or a sniper rifle, and then whichever one you pick, you will enter the battlefield with. Then the second best practice is showing progression to the user. So the user needs to get the feeling when they're playing the playable that they're getting somewhere. And that can be the next level. It can also be very clear, right, where you have some sort of progression bar. But it can also be a story progression or a character progression. But the user needs to feel motivated to continue playing and then hopefully install the game. And then finally, we currently see long playables perform very well. And these can be playables of sometimes a minute or even 2 minutes. It does circle back to the previous slide that, yes, longer playables, they can work well, but only if you apply smart pacing and progression. You can actually use analytics on Unity Playworks and then figure out at what part of the playable users drop off. If you see that users drop off at the beginning or maybe in the middle, you're then able to tighten up the pacing at those spots and then optimize your playable. All right, again, the question, why do iterations matter? So let's look at an example and also show some numbers. We have 3 iterations here. Again, we can play them in a little bit. They all come from the same playable build, so they're all made from one Unity scene. And then they have settings applied to them, so we were able to create these builds. I'll briefly talk about them and then we can play them. The first one is the most difficult one, and so you have a water scooter and you need to jump waves and then make it to the end, and you need to avoid the obstacles during the race, and then you need to collect coins. So the first one is the most difficult one, and most players fail during the first or in the first iteration. The second iteration has a lot less enemies, so you will make it all the way to the end. And then at the end, you can still fail because there is a difficult wave at the end. And then the third and final iteration is super easy. There's almost no enemies, no obstacles. You just race to the end and most people will finish that one and succeed. So let's play them all one by one. So I would like to invite you to take out your phone and go ahead and scan this one. I'll pause for 30 seconds now. If you, by the way, if you fail, you can refresh it and try again. Is there anyone that failed? You failed, you failed. Okay. So a lot of people failed. This is, by the way, also something we measure. So the playable is live, and we're able to measure who's failing and who is not. And we're also able to measure if you fail, what does that mean for performance, versus if you lose, what that's, or if versus if you win, what that means for performance. All right, let's do the second one. So the second one, like I said, is more easier at the beginning, but there is a difficult wave at the end. So you might be able to fail, but it's a bit more 50-50 of users who fail and succeed. Anyone who won? Okay, great. And then the final one is just, it's straight up easy. And I am assuming that there is some gamers in the crowd as well, so you might feel, how do you say, it's too easy for most gamers. So. All right, so now that we've played each iteration, which one do you think won? Which one is the best one in terms of conversion? With which one are users more likely to install your game? And with first one, second, third one. So the answer is that it's hard to tell, and that's exactly why you need to test it, because you can think like, hey, maybe the easiest one, people will like it and they play the game. Maybe you think, hey, the most difficult one, people will get frustrated and therefore install the game. So you don't know and you need to test it. But let's have a look at the results. So the first iteration won, which was the hardest one. And we look at engagement. So engagement is whenever you start playing the playable, we call that engagement. And CTR is how many users from seeing the impression or seeing the playable actually went to the store. The test does not end here though, because with the settings we've seen earlier, we can try and further optimize this playable. We can try to make the playable longer. We can try to speed it up more or have some sort of difficulty progression through there. The difference in the results that we see here is exactly why playable testing is so important. But also note that in this example, the most difficult one is the winning one. But it might not be true for another playable where you can see that the easiest iteration is the one that performs best. So let's look into our valued partner, Ketchup, and how they have been using Playworks to build and test playable iterations for many of their titles, but we'll specifically look into Rider Worlds. So first, a little bit about Ketchup. So Ketchup is an industry veteran. They are based in Paris, and they're known for their titles, 2048, Knife Hit, Rider Worlds, and also the playable you just played, that one is from Ketchup. Ketchup was founded in 2014 and then acquired by Ubisoft 2 years later. And Ketchup was one of the first companies to successfully adopt the hyper-casual model. And the hyper-casual model is where they would help small studios with publishing their games and bringing out many hyper-casual games, and eventually just bringing out many games and figuring out what sticks. They've been very successful in doing this, and at the time, this was a very revolutionary approach to publishing games. They have helped many studios across the world, and personally, I have worked with Ketchup for close to a decade, so it's a company that's very dear to me. And then Rider Worlds was released in 2023, and it's a sequel to their original game, Rider. Rider was a hyper-casual game, but then with Rider Worlds, they transformed it into a hybrid casual game with more depth, worlds to travel to, championships to do and upgrades to do. It's available on iOS and Android, and as of today, it has over 100 million downloads. We'll play a few playables from Rider Worlds as well, but I also recommend you to download the game after this. It's a lot of fun. So here we have 3 playables from Ketchup, and they all share the same core, which is gameplay. The gameplay is exactly the same as from the game itself, and it's very easy for users to quickly understand the mechanic. Ketchup then built 3 different iterations. One which is a very simple type of gameplay. It's very straightforward. You just need to race to the end, and that's it. The second one is a police chase. So, as the mission says, you need to escape from the cops. And then the third one is a crossover with Ubisoft's Hungry Shark. So it's a shark-themed race, and also there you need to escape the shark police at some point. And each iteration has its own hook. This one is you need to race, hold to accelerate. Here you have the mission, and then there you have the shark. So the idea is here to test, hey, what works best? So let's have a look at each iteration. And yeah, go ahead and play them. I also have a video playing on the side, but feel free to play it. So I mentioned that this was the easiest one, by the way. So if you just failed it, you can refresh and try again. All right, are you ready for the second iteration? There we go. So with the second iteration, you need to escape from the police. And for most players, this seems to go well in the beginning, but eventually the police will catch up and then catch you. Again?
Supposed to fail?
Yes. You cannot win this one, but you are able to stay ahead for a little bit. Again, you can refresh it, you can try it a few times. I'll give it 15 more seconds and then we go to the third and final iteration. All right, and then for the third and final one, this is a collaboration between Ubisoft's Hungry Shark, and at first you do not see a goal, so you just start as a shark. But then as you go along, you will see that there's more sharks, and it's actually police sharks, and you need to, again, evade the shark police. In my experience, this one was a bit more easy to stay ahead than the previous one, but then at the end, you will run into this huge wall, and you just fail. It almost seems unfair because I've played it many times and I was never able to make it up the wall. So it feels like that's just made impossible on intention. So again, I'll give this 15 more seconds. And then I would just want to go over the settings that Ketchup has applied for this playable. So each iteration that we've just played were all from the same playable build. And just by changing some of the settings, you have seen 3 different experiences. There are settings that you can see here for the speed start. You can enable or disable the chase, and then enable or select the level of capture probability. You can set the distance that is required, or it's called the busted distance. So that's the distance until you get busted. You can enable or disable opponents, so you can make it into a race or not. And then there's many colors to pick from. And you can see that by utilizing all of these settings, we were able to create the different iterations. Also note that we can create many more playables after this, many more iterations, because these were just 3. But again, if you just look at the amount of settings we have here, we can change the colors, we can change the opponents, we can have a countdown at the start. So which iteration performed best? And again, what do you think? So the answer is we shouldn't think, we should test it. So it's really hard, right, to predict like, hey, which one was better in terms of which one will do better in terms of performance. Will users like the classical experience? Do users like shark cars? Or do people like it when the police is chasing them and then they get caught? So these are the questions that, again, show why iterations are so important and why you need to test them. And the winner was the second iteration. And again, if we look at the numbers, we can see that the first one had some engagement of 58%, but a rather low CTR if we compare it to the other versions. Then going into the third one, a higher engagement rate and then also a higher CTR. But then the middle one performed a lot better. And I think there's a few reasons for this, but you can make your own conclusions. I think the first reason is the mission is clear from the start. So it tells you you need to escape from the cop, and you immediately know what needs to be done. So that goes back to the best practice of having a clear and understandable hook. Then the mission is easy at first, and then there is some progression where you kind of stay ahead of the cops and you think you will make it, but then at the end there is the emotion of, hey, this is unfair, there's a steep wall here, which might urge you to retry, and because you got so close. And then again, this playable is not done yet, because from here we can do more testing, more iterations, try to further optimize it, and get even better metrics. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. I have one more slide, which is the summary. So playables are becoming increasingly important, if not are already very important for UA. And if you're not using them today, you're missing out. Playables are not just better ads, they can help you improve the whole UA funnel and make your game more profitable as a whole. Playworks can help you build playables in-house, so you have your own creative control when building, and that can be done directly from the Unity engine. And then creating and testing iterations is essential for playable optimization, as we've seen with the examples. And many studios are already doing this. We have seen the example of Ketchup, but we are working with more than 100 studios across the globe with building playables. If you would like to try Playworks for yourself, you can go to playworks.unity.com and you can sign up for a free account and start building playables from the Unity engine. Feel free to also send me a message. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'll also be here to answer questions, and I'll open the floor for any questions right now.